Story Time with Stephanie Story.
Hi, welcome to the show Story Time. I am your host, art historical novelist. I am so looking forward to this conversation today because this is my first songwriter to have on this show. Yes, I love music. I used to play the piano and the guitar and sing, but I am not well versed enough in songwriting to be able to express what this process is. So I have a lot of questions for my guest today. He is a songwriter, obviously, beatboxer, producer, artist manager, toured for 12 years with indie guitar bands and beatbox band Scratch Track. Now performs solo. There's a lot of other things to talk to him about. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you so much for being here today, David Lee, aka Rockababyrock. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on Story Time.
Right. Well, at least we'll see what we can do. Look,
yes,
I am a longtime television producer, so I wrote questions and crafted story for talk television shows like this one. I'm a art historical novelist, so I write really long form fiction. But this magic that goes into the poetry / music of songwriting amazes me. I think I'm like everybody else in that a good piece of music moves me emotionally. It changes the way I see the world. It does so much to my brain. But I'm honestly at a loss for how anybody writes a song. It sounds silly. I don't know whether the music comes first. I don't know whether the lyrics come first. I don't know how it comes in your head. I don't know how you write it. I don't know how you revise it. Is there any of that you can give some light to me about this process?
No, absolutely. And I think it's probably different for everyone. And I think that inspiration in art sometimes comes like lightning bolts, sometimes comes in the mundane, sometimes comes in all shapes and sizes. A lot of people that I know write songs, they have an idea or a phrase they want to say and craft it. For me, it's all about the groove. It's all about how the song's created. And actually, it's funny is that I thought you might ask me, and I didn't know if anyone's ever showed you or even tried to do a performance on your show, but I have my little loop pedal here, okay? It's right here, and I'm gonna just give you an example of how, as a beatboxer and performer, I do a lot of looping with a loop pedal. So my process with songwriting is different than a lot of other people's because I don't necessarily call myself an instrumentalist. I have a keyboard here, but I mostly make songs with my mouth and I make beats. So I have a little loop pedal here, and so I would have an idea if I want a fast song or a slow song. You pick fast or slow. Which one do you want to do?
Fast.
Fast. So I would think something that grooves. I'd say I would loop the beat over it, and then sometimes if a melody comes to mind or if a groove comes to mind, I'll do like a vocal bass line and go, I'll do something like, I'll do, and then I'll have that groove, and then I'll just kind of come up with the song over it. And so sometimes if you have like a phrase or a message you want to do, if there's like a brief from publishers that say we're looking for a song about snow, you work that out. But sometimes it's just kind of like I just kind of mumble through and then think about that time I was talking to Stephanie's story, yeah. Just think about that time I was talking to Stephanie's story. I was thinking about that time I was talking to Stephanie, something like Stephanie's story, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just kind of freestyle that, or I might change it to be like, oh, story time, yeah, we on story time, yeah, we on story time. And so it just kind of depends on what feels right and what feels good, and I kind of let the vibe take me there, you know?
Okay, I have 800 questions. Okay, the first is super technical. That loop pedal you have, it
Yes.
records a line you lay down on track, and then it collects it, and then you can overlay things.
Yep.
Is that
And I can
basically what it
stack.
does?
Yep. I can stack and stack. Free product placement. Stack and stack all the sounds that I want. I can stack all the sounds that I want on this pedal, and it records it. So I can even just say one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. I can even just say one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. I can even just say one thing at a time, one thing, and it repeats it. One thing at a time. I can even just say, and it just repeats it.
And that creates its own rhythm
Creates
by
its own
where
rhythm.
it repeats.
Yeah.
That's
Right?
amazing.
Right?
Okay, but what you did was super like gut level. Like you were just going with where you felt it should go in the moment, right?
Totally.
Like it
Totally.
feels super improvisational.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's kind of like, to me, I want the song to feel as natural and as non-forced as possible. You know, I think that's the way I like to make art, is that it feels and out of me like something that I would want to sing, or that feels catchy, or that feels something like, yeah, I could bob my head to that, you know? Think about, that was pretty cool. I was like, just something.
Great. Are you kidding? I loved it. I have a theme song that I love that my friend wrote. Otherwise, I'd be going, I'm using that. That's awesome.
All great. All good. All good. All good.
Okay, but where does that because you were just able to just go with it. How much practice did you, because I presume this comes from years and years and years of doing this, where you make it look so easy and so improvisational. How much background work goes into being able to just do that like that?
Yeah, a lot. You know, my history, music's been in my blood since the beginning. You know, since the beginning of time. No, since the beginning of my time. Both my parents are musical. My mom has her master's in piano. My dad has his degree in voice. I sang growing up, traveling with my family and singing. That's a whole nother episode for this show of how I grew up and traveling and singing. But I went to college in West Tennessee and got my degree in voice. And then when I was in college, started learning beatboxing and working through it and sounds. And actually, one of our mutual friends, Will Gray, was the one who kind of helped me hone some sounds of my snare sound and et cetera. So that kind of developed, and that's kind of how my band Scratch Track started. It was me, Will Gray, and a guy named Jason Hamlin, and we kind of developed this beatboxing acoustic guitar thing. And then from there, I've just kind of like started looping. And then now I do one-man show type stuff. I'm in another band now. I beatbox, and I do a lot of my songwriting and production with the beatboxing element. So it's been years. I've been beatboxing professionally for 18 years. So, yeah.
18 years. That's why that looks easy.
It was funny. I haven't said that in a while. When I said that out loud, I was like, how old are you, dude? Yeah, I started when I was 2. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's
right?
been
Don't age yourself.
I know, right?
All the time, like, what? I haven't been producing TV that long.
I started when I was 4. Whatever. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But it's been a process, and I've, and there's still times where I'll perform and I'll not completely nail it like I wanted to. Most people probably wouldn't be able to notice, but there's times I'm like, oh, that could have been better. So I'm still a student trying to always get better at pretty much everything, but especially beatboxing and looping.
Okay, when you are performing beatboxing, and then I'm not going to let you get by with I was a kid and went traveling the world, and we'll talk about that some other time. I'm going to come back to that. But
right.
When you are performing beatboxing, is it primarily improvisational, or have you written stuff before and revised it and reworked it to make it the best it can be? What's sort of the breakdown of a beatbox performance? Because it feels so improvisational.
No, totally. A lot of the times where I'll perform a one-man show might be where I'm taking popular songs or cover songs and kind of remaking them. I do some freestyling, improv things for for the showmanship of the show. But I do a lot of songwriting as well, songs that are original, and perform those. And then some of the songs that I've even recorded or have written lately that have full production instruments, I will do my own beatboxing and looping version of it because it's what I do. So yeah, so I think it's that original music is my passion. Creation and art is my passion. But I also love the idea of taking a whoever Tom Petty song or a Three Dog Night song and doing my own version of it, which you probably haven't heard with just the one voice looping itself. So enjoy
Okay.
it.
So, what is the revision process like for what you just did? I know what the revision process looks like for writing a book or writing a
Oh yeah.
story. I go back in and I move words around.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like from the style of music you create? What's the revision process like?
Usually when I'm writing something alone or even with other people, the first kind of draft of it is as simple as, oh, that's cool. Let me get my voice memo on my phone and let's record the voice memo of it and then listen back to it. Or what was that we said there? What did I say there? Oh, that was cool, melody. Let's build on that. And then, start again and be like, this isn't really working. And sometimes we scrap it. But the first usually the version of the song, which is actually why we actually named our band Scratch Track, because Scratch Track is usually just the rough version and the most basic stripped down version of a song. So usually guitar and vocal or piano and vocal, you lay down a scratch track in the studio because it's intended to be thrown away. It's just to be intended as a reference. So the revision process for me when I'm writing a song is to kind of instinctively feel that the naturalness of the groove or the song, the melody or the lyric or what it was, and then listen and then kind of rebuild it. But usually the process will happen within like I have a personal limit that I like to keep things under 3 hours. I feel like if you can't come up with a song in 3 hours, then I mean the basis of a song, like the idea. We may not even get to finishing the words of the verses or the chorus or a bridge, but if we've spent 3 hours and we don't have some sort of structure, like we don't have like a groove or a chord or music, the music structure or some type of melody, if we don't have any of that, then I just think it's not going to come. Let's try it again another day or later, because it's just, I don't want to, I feel like it's, just for me personally, I try not to go over 3 hours of circling the wagons. I want to like have an idea. If I have an idea, I've spent 5-6 hours on a song, but if I don't have an idea within 3 hours, then if the idea doesn't feel solid, then let's start over or come back another day. So.
That's interesting. I do feel like there is that kind of you're beating the horse of your creativity so far, and at some point you just got to go, I'm moving on. For
Yeah.
a novelist, you can't just do that in 3 hours and move on.
Right. For sure.
Time.
It's like 3 months for a novelist, I'm sure.
And then you
It's like,
finally give up. It's a little bit
right, for
timing.
sure.
Okay. Again, 8,000 questions, but I have to go back before I forget. You traveled and performed as a kid?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what that was and how old were you? And
So first time I sang on stage, I was 7. Both of my parents started singing at churches locally in the Kansas City area. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, originally. KCMO, go Chiefs. But anyway, I'm from Kansas City, and so we started singing locally. They started singing. They were invited to sing at different churches in the area, and then they started being invited to sing at churches around Missouri. Then it turned into Kansas. Then it turned into they started getting invited to sing at churches so much so that they stopped working their regular jobs and they started doing it full-time ministry. And so I was 7 when that started. They did it for 2 years, and my grandmother lived at home with us during the school year. I have 2 older sisters, so the 3 of us and my grandma stayed at home. Mom and dad would like travel and sing on the weekends, and they'd come back for a day or two and leave. And they realized there's no way to raise a family. They're like, you guys want to come with us? So we were like, yeah. So I started homeschooling at age 9 and traveled with my parents and sang at churches all across the United States until I graduated high school. So It was wild. Yeah, we were on the road about 40 to 45 weeks out of the year in our busiest stretch of time, which is probably the busiest stretch of time I remember was probably from like 1992 to when I graduated. Well, I can't say when I graduated, but it was I can say when I graduated, but we did it probably throughout the 90s was probably the busiest when I was there the most as well. But yeah, it was great. It was a crazy way to live. It was, but it seemed normal to me because that's how I grew up. I got a chance to meet people every week all over the country. Some of my dearest friends to this day are people that I met singing at their church when I was a kid, and
And
it's
what
pretty.
does it give you musically still? Because, like, I mean, I wrote and read when I was a kid too, and I can look back and think, well, I picked up this from this author, and I picked up
Yeah.
this from this experience. What do you have to still draw off of that
Oh,
experience
absolutely. I mean,
today?
what's funny? I get up on stage and I don't really have that adrenaline or that fear or that nervousness because I've been on stage so much since I was 9 years old. So I've definitely got my 10,000 hours in on live performance. So I've definitely got my so the live performance thing feels I feel really natural there. I may not be the greatest of all time, but I definitely feel comfortable in on being on stage. So that's what I pull from is just like the amount of times I've sang in front of people. If you've sang at a small country church in the middle of, Missouri, you can sing anywhere.
Do you still remember the first time you went on stage and performed? Do you remember that feeling at all?
Yeah. I mean, there have been times in shows over the last however many years that I can remember feeling this is going to be a lot of fun or this is exciting. Well, the very first time I went on stage, I didn't want to go on stage, but my father kind of made me. But yeah, I remember it. It's vague. I can remember the church. I remember kind of what I had on. I remember what I sang. Um, I remember practicing for it in our living room in Kansas City. But I definitely know I was either 7 or 8. Or maybe I definitely think I was 7. It's like vivid. I remember that time and I was like, what's going on? So I don't remember singing before that. I don't remember ever being like, I want to sing. I just remember being like, hey, I learned this song. All right, DJ, you're going to sing this. I was like, what? Okay. So,
So when did you figure out you wanted it to be your career? It was your parents' career. Go on stage at
you
7. I
know,
don't know, but
yeah, there is a space-time continuum moment where it all clicked in my head. I think I was a freshman or sophomore in high school. Yeah, I was a sophomore in high school. We've been traveling. Both my sisters had already graduated. They had gone away to college. So it was just me and my parents. So I think I was 15. Yeah. So my dad had used his voice so much that he had developed some polyps, like like nodes on his vocal cords, and he was put on vocal rest. So he couldn't sing. So my mom could still play, and they asked me, "Hey, can you just do?" Because before it would be like mom and dad. My mom would play piano solos and accompany my dad. My dad would sing, and then they'd bring up DJ to do a song, and then DJ come and do another song, and I might sing one with him or something. And I would do like 2 or 3. I was like special guest performance during the performance of my parents. Well, then it turned into dad can't sing. Can you do the heavy lifting, sing most of the songs, then dad will do some speaking, mom will play. So I had to kind of carry the load at like 15 years old to kind of like keep my family's ministry like going. So I remember doing that. I remember at the time I was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. I remember singing. I was starting to really enjoy singing. This was like, the 90s, and there were some great R&B groups, and there was a lot of good vocal stuff happening in the 90s. So I was really enjoying singing and the responses that I was getting, and girls thought I was cute, and it was a cool feeling from the singing aspect. And then it was like, oh, I'm helping our parents' ministry, our family's ministry, and people are responding to it. And I remember it all clicking in my head, like, oh, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is who I am.
But earlier in this conversation, you mentioned our mutual friend, Will Gray.
Yes.
I helped him in the very early stages of his documentary Broke about the struggles that musicians have and making a living at this point, particularly if you're not, like Beyonce or somebody. I don't think my viewers at home realize sort of what the realities of the music industry are. Can you just tell my watchers at home, and then they can go watch Broke to get, the really dirty side of it. But but, but can you tell my viewers at home a little bit about what the realities day to day of the music industry are?
Yeah, well, the music industry in 2020 it's very I don't want to use the word competitive, but there's a lot of us. There's a lot of people writing songs. They say, for things in Nashville, there's like 2,000 songs a day being written, just here. It's probably more than that, actually. I hear all these numbers about 50,000 songs a day are being uploaded to Spotify and Apple Music a day. Yeah, that's what I said. So it's tough. It's a tough way to make a living. And when I started this, we were in a van, we were touring and playing shows, and people had to come out and see us. There was no YouTube, there was no iTunes, there was no, none of that. You had to like be in Atlanta or be in Chicago or be in some random town in Iowa to see Scratch Track play. So there was some responsibility on that. Now it's like, oh, there's a show down the street. Oh, I'll just see who's there and watch their Insta story, and catch 15 seconds, And so I think there's, the music nowadays is not easy. But it's amazing the availability that we have. And there's also 7 billion people in the world. So there's people out there that can, there's still audiences out there. So you just have to kind of try to find a way to find yours.
And you've talked about touring and performing. I know for me, my newest novel came out on April 7th. So right in the middle of all the lockdown and the close down, I had to cancel like 3 months of events. It has to impact musicians. I've seen so many musicians trying to do like, digital events and all of that stuff.
Yep.
How has that
Virtual.
impacted your personal career over the last couple of months and switching stuff out and not being able to perform or
Yeah.
just about to performing? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't do a ton of as much performing as I used to, but it has definitely affected me. The pandemic and the quarantine has definitely affected my co-writing and the meetings I would take and the no pun intended, but the FaceTime that you get in networking and spending time with people and doing that. And actually, I have a new project called The Magi. We're a band that's releasing music this summer. Releasing this, our single comes out this summer, and we had a lot of shows lined up during this quarantine. Shows at some big events that we were performing at. It was kind of our coming out party as a band to be like, hey, we're here. And but it didn't really faze me because I mean, it wasn't like this happened and it just happened to this town or this or that town. Everyone was affected by this, and so we're all just kind of like, there's a lot to me. There's a lot of grace in that because we're all kind of reeling from it and trying to understand what tomorrow looks like and what yesterday was. So
Okay, so if you're trying to process and you're trying to understand what all of this was, both things now feel combined because I feel like the pandemic fed right into all of this renewed interest in the Black Lives Matter protests after George Floyd was murdered. And I'm wondering how you're processing both of those moments, or the Black Lives Matter moment or the pandemic moment, and whether that's going to change what you're writing about. I'm talking to a lot of authors about how it's going to change what we have to write about in so many ways. Is it going to change your music in any way? Are you processing that yet?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you can imagine this, but I've had a lot of conversations about this very thing. A lot of phone calls, text messages, direct messages, where people are trying to know how they should feel, and know what they just saw or what's happening around them, and I in some ways feel I have a lot of thoughts about this, and I'll try to keep this concise. For me personally, I don't know if it's going to necessarily change how I make art, mostly because, Black Lives Matter and systemic racism isn't really breaking news to me. This is something that's
Yep.
something that I've experienced my whole life. So it's not something that I've overly, I don't want to say the word concerned, overly shocked by, or all of a sudden enraged or overly emotional about it. Mostly because I don't have the luxury to be overly emotional about systemic racism. It's just like typical. I mean, again, that's another conversation that we could have for hours about that subject. But for me, specifically with my art and with writing, I've always tried to, you know, write through my lens and through my perspective as a Black man in America. Um, but my whole thing is always I always wanted to make powerful art. And I've always wanted it to be great art, and not just art with an agenda, or art with a message, or art that says, hey, you need to think like me, or feel like me, or act like me. But I want to make art that's undeniable and that speaks truth. And that's kind of where I come from. I try to come from at all times. It's hard not to be affected by what's going on in the news and the way we're all reacting to it. And of course, we've been locked up for like 11 weeks. So, it's probably even more emotional, and every day I deal with things differently. So I'm not trying to act all Joe Cool, Arthur Fonzarelli here. I'm not trying to be, completely, I'm not trying to say that. I hope you hear my heart on that, I'm just, I'm definitely affected by it. But I think as far as specifically with my art, I'm just kind of, it's funny because one of the songs that the Magi is releasing feels like a song that could have been written last week,
I always feel like music's always on the front edge of change for all of us in so
Yeah.
many ways, and music breaks down so many barriers for all of, I mean, good and bad and different. I mean, it's always on the forefront of change, I think, because it's so emotional.
Absolutely.
Um, uh, but I'm just also fascinated by that. Okay, so now I do have one last question I have to ask you, and then I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
Why is it that I think, and I don't think I'm alone, that I think music is the most emotionally impactful art on the planet? That it gets in your head and your heart, like when you're mourning a breakup, or you're mourning the pandemic, or you're mourning anything. So many of us turn to music for solace and emotional release. Is there something particular about that art form that makes that possible?
I've never had this question asked me before, but as you were asking it, some things flew through my brain, and I'm just gonna spitball them.
Right.
So, with visual art, if you see a beautiful painting or sculpture or something, it's powerful and impactful there in the moment when you see it. With a book, a great book, you have it in your hand and you read it, and you may memorize it and you may be able to recite it. But with music, the way music is delivered to you, in the increments that it's delivered to you in, it's designed to affect the brain, and it's designed to like repeat, and that's why there's stanzas and choruses, that it's designed to pop into your mind and you be able to sing and hum it. It's like I can't sing to you all of Beethoven's fifth, but if I hear anyone go dun 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 dun, that's all I need. I don't even need the dun 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 dun. I don't need the second part. I just need the dun 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 dun. I mean, and that's even true with among other things I do, I also I've been teaching a class about how hip hop got to the suburbs, which is, again, another conversation we should have. I've gone to some colleges and taught how hip hop got to the suburbs, and I play them some songs. And what I typically do is I'll start playing songs and talk through it, but I will play the very beginning intro to the theme song to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I literally it will go boom, 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 boom. That's how it goes. I will literally play, it will go boom. That's all they hear. And they're all like, oh, and they all know. It's crazy. And these kids were all born like, after that show, probably even, off the air. But that song in syndication, that song, that theme song, as you know, intro the song, I can still sing theme songs from shows that I watched when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I was singing the theme song of Growing Pains the other day, talking to my sister about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I would sing it now, but we want to get licensing in trouble, so
Right.
you know.
That Facts of Life is running through my head.
Right? Oh, it's such a great song. Different Strokes theme song, man, which is funny because Alan Thicke, who was in Growing Pains, wrote the Different Strokes theme song. Yeah, he's a musician and I think he wrote another, he wrote some other songs too. Rest in peace, Alan Thicke. But, so that's my thought. I think that because music is designed to be repeated, and it's probably there's some scientific stuff that I don't know as far as like melody and math and what it does to the brain, and obviously like major chords versus minor chords and the progression of that and how it affects you emotionally. I know there's science to that, the music theory. We have to get like a music theorist in here to really break this down. And but that's episode 4, right? For part 4 for us. We'll do the music theorist thing.
Coming up. Okay. No, but no. I think that makes sense that it hits us emotionally because it is designed to work its way into the brain in a very special way. So all of that to say is, I think the art you do is the most important. So good luck with it because it's a big responsibility.
Thank you very much. No hashtag no pressure.
No pressure, DJ. Sorry. Thank you for coming here and enlightening me and my viewers about music and all of the magic behind it. I don't think we got to the bottom of any of it, but maybe.
Story time virtually. We've got time and plenty of stories, talking stories in a novel way. Story time with Steph